So this video is on essay 230. The name of the standard is audit documentation. This is going to be concerned about the working papers, whatever the auditor has to document in his working papers. Working papers and audit documentation is one and the same. So starting off, first of all, we need to know about working papers. See, under documentation, working papers are prepared and obtained. That is, they can be either be prepared by the auditor or they can be directly obtained by the auditor as an evidence, etc. They are prepared and obtained by the auditor, and not just prepared and obtained, they are also retained by the auditor. At the end of the day, the documentation, whatever working papers the auditor has, are all the property of the auditor. It is the discretion. Discretion means it is the will of the auditor that whether he wants to give it to any other person or not. He is under no obligation, or he is under no duty to give it to any other, even to the client. Even the client cannot have control over the documentation. Even the client cannot say that I need documentations, I need your working papers. It is the property of the auditor, and it is for the auditor to decide whether he would give it to the client or not. Ultimately, he also has to ensure that he do not give these working papers to a third party without the approval of the client, that because these are some important information of the client, so you cannot give it as an auditor, you cannot give it to any third party unless you are required by law. If the law says that you need to disclose such information to the reserve bank, or you need to disclose such information to the registrar or such kind of things, in that case you may disclose it because this is required by law. Otherwise, in no case you cannot disclose it to any third party without the approval of the client, because these are very confidential information, right? So the working papers are prepared and obtained by the auditor, A raised to power R means auditor, and retained by him in connection with the performance of audit. Now, moving on to the objective of audit documentation, it is an evidence. Audit documentation acts as an evidence of the auditor's basis for conclusion. It provides an evidence for how you concluded, conclusion about the achievement of the overall objective of the audit, that you have achieved the overall objective. Audit documentation serves as an evidence. It tends to prove that yes, you have achieved the audit objective, and in order to prove that, you have audit documentation. These are the basis for evidence. So the main objective of the audit documentation is that it acts as an evidence of the auditor's basis for conclusion about the achievement of the overall objective of the audit. Another evidence, it acts as an evidence that the audit was planned and performed. This is something which I also discussed in essay 220 on quality control systems, and although I'm not asking you to watch that particular video before this, because there's not much linkage between these two, so just a kind of reminder that it acts as an evidence that the audit was planned and performed. It has been planned and performed in accordance with standards. You have followed the standards on auditing. You have followed the standard 230. You have followed the standard on auditing 700, 705. Every standard which is relevant. This is very important. Only those standards which are relevant for this particular assignment or for this particular engagement have been complied. So the audit was planned and performed in accordance with those standards and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. You followed the laws and regulations which are applicable. Now, what is the purpose of audit documentation? It assists the audit team to plan and perform audit. They know what kind of work is left, what work they have already done. If even when they come for the future audits, it would help them to do that particular audit in a better way, because they know what kind of information they need to obtain, where the chances of a misstatement is. So these kind of things you always keep it in a documentation or in your working paper. But at the same time, you need to know that you are not required to document 100%. You are not required to keep working papers of 100% of the information, because it would not only become so time consuming and so expensive, but it will also put a lot of pressure on your articles, on the engagement, on the team of audit team. It would be very put a lot of pressure on them. At the same time, you would have to charge hefty fees from the clients, etc. So you cannot document everything. You need to document only significant, important matters, right? So the purpose is to assist the audit team to plan and perform audit, enable the audit team to be accountable for its work. You can hold the person accountable. Yes, you did this particular work because your name is in the audit documentation, that I gave the physical verification work to Mr. A. You are Mr. A. Now you are responsible. You are accountable. Now planning and retaining a record of matters of continuing significance to future audits. When you come for the future audits, these records may be retained. So retaining a record of matters of continuing significance, they are for continuing significance. That is, they are not just valid for this particular engagement or this particular audit. They are also valid for future audits as well. Right. So this is the purpose of audit documentation. And then we have a small case that this standard on auditing will tell you that what things you have to document. Now whatever, so it's, if it says that you have to document A, you have to document B, you have to document C, that doesn't mean that this is an exhaustive list. If you have watched my some other videos on standards on auditing, you would have found that in every video there's a at the end of the video or at the end of the standard on auditing, there's a portion named as documentation. That is, you have to document those things. So those documentation shall also be taken into consideration, and those documentation which are given in this standard shall also be taken into consideration, right? So in case other essays, that is other standards on auditing, means except 230 prescribe more documentation requirements for specific purpose, those documentation are also to be maintained. You need to maintain those documentation as well, which non-essay 230 are saying you to do. Now we are on to the form and content and extent of audit documentation. See, auditor shall prepare audit documentation that is sufficient to enable an experienced auditor. That is not you, that is an auditor. You've prepared an audit documentation. It should be prepared in such a manner that if an experienced auditor who has no linkage with this particular audit is able to understand what you did. That is, you prepared the audit documentation, and an experienced auditor comes and he can straight away tell that you concluded this, you did perform these procedures, you obtained these evidences by looking at your audit documentation, right? So auditor shall prepare audit documentation that is sufficient to enable an experienced auditor. It enables an experienced auditor having no previous connection with audit with audit. That is, if you're auditing the accounts of BMW, the experienced auditor is one who has no linkage with BMW. He has never audited the accounts of BMW, but still he is able to understand what you did with the BMW, right? Having no previous connection with audit, he is able to understand the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures that you performed to comply with standards and auditing and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Earlier I told you about this. The results that you reached at, the results of audit procedure performed, and the audit evidences you obtained, significant matters arising during the audit, the conclusions that you have reached thereon, significant professional judgments you have made in reaching these conclusions, everything the experienced auditor is able to understand. Only in that case we will say that the form of your audit documentation is right. Now see, when we're talking about this nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure, NTE refers to nature, timing, and extent of audit procedure. In documenting the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedure performed, auditor shall record three things: the identifying characteristics of specific items. You have audited some specific items or specific matters. The characteristics, you have to record their characteristics so that you can identify those matters, you can identify those items. Who performed the audit work? See, I am showing you an example of audit documentation, audit working paper. See, this is a suggested format of audit working paper, XY and company chartered accountants. Here you write the name of the auditor, the date, the name of the client, accounting year, etc. You may pause the video to have a look at this. Now looking at see over here, signature of the auditor reviewed by the source of information, and over here we have the name of the auditor and date. See, over here, who performed the audit? You have to record who performed the audit work and date on which such work was completed. Signature of the auditor, the auditor's name and the date of this working paper, and the date on which it was completed, etc. is going to be written down in the working paper. Who reviewed the work, audit work? It was reviewed by. Who reviewed the audit work, and the date and extent of such review is going to sign it with the date, etc. This is not a format which is, a universal format. You may include in some more information, you may delete more information, but it should be in such a format that it is an experienced auditor is able to understand this. And you may focus on this word. This is a suggested format. It is not the not a universal format, right? And so when you're documenting the NTE, nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure, you should record the characteristics, the who performed the audit, who reviewed the audit as well. Now we are on to the contents. As I told you, we have the client's name. Earlier I showed you over here that the name of the client, the accounting year, these kind of these are all clients, but they are not as same as these because this is not a universal, as I earlier told you. Right, so now we have client's name, the type of engagement, the nature of client's business, degree of reliance on internal control. You first of all, you audited the internal control, and you found that internal control are effective or not. These, so if the internal control are not effective, then you won't place a reliance. That is, you won't rely on those internal controls. Then sources of information. Again, source of information you are going to write. Then conclusions you reached, the supervision and review of work performed by assistants, so that the work was performed by the assistants, and there's a senior who is supervising and reviewing the work they performed. Then classification of working paper. The working papers can be classified into permanent audit file and current audit file. Now I need to tell you what comes under this permanent audit file and current audit file. For this, I'm just showing you an example from this book because there are many. You may, if you want to write it down, you may pause the video and write them down. Right, see, we have permanent audit files. It consists of the memorandum, MOA, AOA, bylaws, laws and regulations, audited financial statement of previous year, record of communication with retiring auditor. These are all coming under permanent audit files. For current audit files, you have this correspondence relating to acceptance of annual appointment, audit program. This is for the particular engagement, therefore this is a current file. And if you are appearing for an IPCC, there is a great possibility that they would give you a certain they would take this particular point, record of communication with retiring auditor, whether it is a part of current audit file or permanent audit file. Then communication with client regarding auditor conclusion reached about significant aspects of audit, etc. So you may pause the video if you want to write it down and write them down. So these are some examples of the permanent audit file and current audit file. So coming back, so I've covered this. Now the contents, I've covered the classification of working papers as well. Now we have working papers. You need to know what they are. See, working papers, they are the records which are prepared by the auditor. First of all, it has been prepared by the auditor, and records of the following: procedures you have applied, the tests you performed, the information that every information you obtained, important conclusions that you reached. So these are the part of these are the records of these things are going to be known as working papers when they are performed or prepared by the auditor. Then examples: audit program, it is going to be containing the procedures that you're going to apply. Analysis is a kind of conclusion. Memorandum is a kind of a reminder or a memo. Letter of confirmation, representation letter, abstracts, photocopies of documents, electronic media containing, even electronic media is a part of your working paper, photocopies is a part of your working paper, etc. Right, so this is what working papers includes. Then we have documenting the significant matters. Auditor should document significant matters discussed with the management. These documents should give the following details, right? If you have had some discussion with the management regarding very important, significant material matters, you need to document them. And what shall those documents contain? They shall contain the nature and particular of the matter. You have discussed some matter, you need to write the nature of the matter you have discussed, the particulars regarding this particular matter, the date on which you discussed. Maybe 31st of March you had a discussion regarding a particular matter. You're going to write the nature, you're going to write the date. With whom the matter was discussed. You may have had a discussion with the general manager or the chief financial officer, etc. The auditor's conclusion of the matter discussed. He had a discussion and he must have concluded something. You need to document that as well, right? So this is what you need to document. So this essay is regarding documentation. You are going to document everything, right? So the nature and the particular of the matter discussed, the date on which you discussed, with whom you discussed, and the conclusions that the auditor reached at. Right, now we have matters arising after the date of auditor's report. This is a kind of case. See, if in exceptional circumstances, now first of all you need to know what exceptional circumstances are. See, example of an exceptional circumstance include facts which become known to the auditor after the date of auditor's report. That is, the day audit you have prepared the auditor's report, and after preparation of the auditor's report, you came to know about a particular fact, but which existed at that date. And on the date of auditor's report, it was existing. It was existing before the date of auditor's report, but you didn't know about this. And if you had known about this fact, that is, if you had any hint about this fact, if you knew that this fact was there, you would have given a modified opinion, or your opinion would have been modified, your opinion would have been different. Repeating it, see, you have already prepared the auditor's report, but after, see over here, see, this is the date of auditor's report, right? This is the date of auditor's report. Now over here you got to know about a fact, right? You got to know about this fact. This is the place where you had knowledge about this fact, but this fact occurred, or this event occurred at this date, right? This date was the event's date, that is before the date of auditor's report. Therefore you could have obtained the information regarding this fact on this date. It was existing on this date, but you got to know about this fact on this date. But if in case you had known about this fact, that is, if at this point of the day, at this date, you had knowledge about this fact, you would have given a modified opinion or a different opinion, right? So reading it, examples of exceptional circumstances include facts which become known to the auditor after the date of auditor's report, but which existed at that date. You get to know about the fact after the date of auditor's report, but that fact existed at that date, and which, if known at that date means this date, if known at that date, might have caused the financial statement to be amended, or the auditors to modify the opinion in the auditor's report. He would have modified the opinion, or there would have been some changes in the financial statement. Regarding this, there is another essay. Auditing, accounting standard AS4 and AS, I guess 29, regarding the subsequent events and contingencies, etc. That could give you a greater clarity. But I hope that this is not a tough thing to know. Now, see. Sorry, I'm so sorry. So this is regarding the exceptional circumstances. Now, if in exceptional circumstances, that is, if in such kind of circumstances, the auditor performs additional procedure, that is, now he is performing some additional procedures, or draws new conclusion after the date of auditor's report. He has prepared the auditor's report, now he is performing more procedures, he is drawing new conclusion. Now the auditor has a new responsibility, that is, he has to document something. What? The circumstances he has encountered, the new or additional procedures he is performing. Over here we are saying that he performs new additional procedures. We have to document these things. That is, we have to document these things. New or additional procedure performed, the audit evidences he has obtained, the conclusions he has reached, because over here he draws a new conclusion. Document this. The conclusions reached and their effect on the auditor's report. When and by whom the resulting changes to audit the documentation were made and reviewed, right? When and by whom. The when is the date and the person when by whom and by whom the resulting changes to audit the documentation were made and reviewed. Example of exceptional circumstances I've already discussed about. Yeah. Documentation of departures from basic principles or essential procedures. That is, there are some principles, there are some procedures which have been laid down, and you are departing from that. That is, you are not following those principles. The laws or the policies and procedures, they say that you have to go this way, but you are not going that way. You are departing from that way. You have a reason, although you have a reason that I cannot go that way. I cannot follow the principle. I cannot follow the procedures. So in this case, what you have to do is you have to document the reason why you are departing, the reason why you are not following the principles, etc. So where in exceptional circumstances the auditor judges it is necessary to depart from a basic principle, he is departing from a basic principle, he is not following a basic principle, or an essential procedure, he is departing from an essential procedure, he is not following an essential procedure, and it is necessary, the auditor says that it is necessary for me to depart, that is relevant in the circumstances of the audit, right? Where in exceptional circumstances the auditor judges it is necessary to depart from the basic principle or an essential procedure that is relevant in the circumstances of the audit. These principles and procedures are relevant. Still the auditor is departing. Still the auditor is not following. They are relevant principles. They are relevant in the circumstances of the audit. Now if he is not following, now what to do? The auditor shall document first this thing unless otherwise clear, that is if it is not clear you need to document the reason for the departure. Why did you depart? Why did you not follow the principles or the procedures? And then here also have to document the how alternative audit procedure performed achieve the objective of the audit, because ultimately your objective is to give an opinion, you have an overall objective of the audit, you have to achieve that objective. Now if you are not following these basic principles, you are following some other principles. If you are not following these procedures, you are following some other procedures, and the outcome or the final destination has to be the objective of the audit. You do it this way or you do it your way, but you have to achieve the objective. So you have to tell how the alternative audit procedures, because you didn't follow this, that is you followed alternative audit procedures. Now you do need to document that how the alternative audit procedures you performed achieved the objective of the audit, because you have to achieve the objective. You would have achieved the objective, but how did the alternative audit procedures performed achieve the objective? Now documentation of inconsistent information. If there is any inconsistency, you need to document that. This is a simple thing. Auditor identified information that is inconsistent with the auditor's final conclusion regarding a significant matter. There is inconsistency. Auditor shall document the way the inconsistency was addressed, how he dealt with such inconsistency. He has to document that. That's a very easy thing, I guess. Now another easy thing, ownership of audit documentation. In the beginning of the video I told you that auditor, it is the property of the auditor, and the auditor at his own discretion may give up some portion of it to the client. See, audit documentation is the property of the auditor. It is his property unless otherwise specified by the law. That is, if the law is not saying so, he may at his discretion, that is, it is his own will, it is his own choice to make portions of or extracts from audit AD refers to audit documentation available to the clients. It's his own will, provided such disclosure does not undermine the validity of work performed or independence of the auditor's personnel. He has to ensure that the validity, that is the although he has to ensure confidentiality as well, that should not disclose it to any third party without the approval of the client or unless required by law. He also has to ensure validity, that it remains valid. I mean, you should not give it to the client which may affect through which it may affect your independence. You have to ensure that you are independent till the end, and ensure that such disclosures do not undermine, that is, reduce the validity of the work you have performed. Time of retention 7 years. You need to at least hold these working audit documentation in 7 years. You have to ensure that they are properly kept. If they are kept in soft copies or hard DVDs, CDs, etc., you need to ensure that they are properly kept, etc. So the retention period is just at least 7 years. Retention period for audit engagement ordinarily not shorter, that is, it can exceed but not less than 7 years from the date of auditor's report. Then we have assembly of the final audit file, that you assemble every working paper, every audit file, etc. So you are given 60 days from the date of auditor's report to assemble everything. Firms shall establish policies and procedures for the timely completion of assembly of audit files. You establish the policies and procedures. Even in essay 220, I discussed about the quality control policies and procedures. You have policies and procedures so that you can timely complete the assembly of audit file. An appropriate time limit within which to complete the assembly of the final audit file is not more than 60 days. Appropriate time limit is not more than 60 days after the date of auditor's report. You have prepared the auditor's report, you have dated the auditor's report, and after 60 days, within a maximum period of 60 days, you need to assemble the audit files. Then we have audit completion memorandum. This is another small topic, and the last topic of this particular video or the standard. Audit completion memorandum. Memorandum refers to a summary. It is going to consist of important matters, only and only important or significant matters that you identify during the audit. So auditor may prepare and retain as part of audit documentation a summary. That is, the completion memorandum is a summary that describes only significant matters identified during audit and how they were addressed. You identified some important matters and how you dealt with, how you addressed those matters. You have to document this in your doc. You may document, because it is your own discretion to keep a audit completion memorandum, but it helps you when you're coming for the audit in the future periods, in the coming future audits. It will definitely help you to, because you know the significant matters, you know what important matters are there with the client. You know how you address them, that is, you how you tackled with them in the last time. So it definitely helps you a lot, these completion memorandum. So benefit: it facilitate effective and efficient reviews and inspection of the documentation, particularly for, definitely in case of large and complex audits. You If you're documenting only the significant matters, it helps you a lot. Then it also helps assist the auditor's consideration of significant matters, because you're documenting the significant matters only, because I mean, it's a summary only. You're not recording or documenting each and everything, just important matters. So it helps the auditor in consideration of those significant matters, helps the auditor to consider whether in light of audit. Yeah, this is a very important thing. See, it also helps the auditor to consider whether, in light of audit procedure performed and conclusions reached. So, for the time being, ignore this particular sentence. Also, help the auditor to consider whether there is any individual relevant standard on auditing objective. That is, we are not considered about SA 230, except SA 230. In every standard on auditing, or in most of the standard on auditing videos I have made, you must have found that initially we prepare we write down the objectives with the standard auditing lays down for the auditor. That is, the objective of the auditor, that he has to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. The objective of the auditor is to give an opinion. He has to give a modified opinion in such case. So we have objectives. So what we are trying to say is that it also helps the auditor to consider whether there is any individual relevant individual objective of the standard auditing that the auditor has not met. He is not able to meet that. For example, in case of SA 500, he is not able to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. There is any individual relevant SA objective, that is, objective of the SA 500, that the auditor has not met or is unable to meet, that would prevent the auditor from achieving the overall objective of the audit. See, ultimately what the auditor has to do is achieve the overall objective of the audit. And to achieve the overall objective of the auditor, or overall objective of the audit, he has to achieve the objective of individual essays. That is, if you want to achieve the overall objective, you need to achieve the objective of SA 500, you need to achieve the objective of SA 700, achieve the objective of SA 6, maybe 300, etc. Each and every essay which is relevant to the audit. There may be 30-40 standards in auditing, out of which maybe 15 or 20 are relevant. So each and every objective of these 15 to 20 standards in auditing should be achieved, right? So we are just concerned with the relevant. So it also helps the auditor to consider whether there is any individual relevant essay objective that the auditor has not met or is unable to meet, that would prevent the auditor, that would not allow, since the auditor could not achieve this objective, it won't allow the auditor to achieve overall objective. Right, now with this line again we are reading this: also helps the auditor to consider whether, in light of audit procedure performed, he performs the audit procedure, he reaches the conclusion, only then he is able to know whether he has achieved the individual objectives or not. So in the light of audit procedures that he has performed, is there any individual relevant essay objective? Is there any individual relevant essay objective that the auditor has not been able to meet, and ultimately could prevent the auditor from achieving the overall objective? So this audit completion memorandum helps the auditor to identify such things as well. he's able to consider this, whether he has able to the auditor has able to achieve the individual essay objectives or not, and whether the overall objectives would be prevented if in case he has not achieved the relevant essay objectives. Right, so this sums up my video on essay 230, audit documentation, and hope you liked my video. You may like my channel, subscribe my channel, like my video. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much.